person who is observing something is actually appearing to be constant, but that is not the reality. You need not hold on to anything rigidly internally, but just act based on the situation of the need of the hour. Very similar to how a doctor operates on a patient, he looks at the OCT or whatsoever. So that fluid nature is what that is going to help one relieve themselves from all their personal baggage and enjoy this worldly life. A warm welcome to one and all. This is Nirupama representing Bagavath Mission. Today the topic of discussion is trying to know who I am. This who am I is a very famous topic that anybody entering spirituality would finally end up thinking of as to who one is. It's one of the very interesting topic to know as well, and everybody is curious to know. So many great people have tried to interpret as to who they are, who we are all are, and all that. So let us see as to what Bagavath Mission has on these lines. Bagavath Mission specializes on mind science, and this is one topic which is inevitable that we need to discuss when we need to know as to how the mind works. In fact, its root as to where the mind is rooted onto. So for us to understand who am I, the very important word here is I. And where does this I originate? The I originates with every single thought a person has. Only when a thought is unfolded, the feeling of I am having this thought, I am experiencing this, I am witnessing this, I see this, I want this, everything comes with a thought. So the very word I is very closely connected with thought. And without a thought, you cannot have this I feeling. So now, because this I is very closely connected with thought, we have to go in and see as to how thought works or how thought operates. And so it becomes very essential for us to see as to how mind is designed, because it is in the mind that the thoughts arise. So let's get into as to how the mind works. The mind works on 4 different levels. The first level, wherein it cognizes with whatever is happening in the external moment. It just reflects the external moment with the help of the various senses. And secondly, it also, the first level is where, like, you know, it's very much like a chat box trying to give you multiple options. It's a catalog of various permutation combination. For example, if I were to go to a hotel, the hotel waiter would offer me various menu items. Of the various items, the person who has come over for the dinner or the lunch can choose some based on the need of the hour, like based on their appetite or based on their likes and dislikes and all that. So the decision maker is the second level of operation, which is done by the intellect. See, mind by itself is very subtle in nature, so identifying and tagging areas would be very difficult. But on a gross level, we try to group various functionality. So one of it being the chattering mind or the conscious mind, which just predominantly does the job of perceiving the external environment through various senses, and then given a situation, it tries to come up with various permutation combinations, like in the case of the eat out that we just discussed. And now let's say, and let me take another example. Now let's say I have a vacation and I am planning to see where exactly I can go, and now my conscious mind would come up with various ideas as to you can go here you can go to a hill station, or you can go for a beachside vacation, or you can go over to your parents' place and spend some time with your parents. Likewise, Okay, but of the various decisions, the intellect picks and chooses one of them. And later, given a situation after this process, the second process is where the intellect does further more analysis. It churns the data, it compares it with the past, it analyzes, pulls out various inferences and all that. And the whole process of the cognition and the analysis, tagging, recognizing, cognizing, all this happens in a field called as the mind field. And the mind field is the potential field which does the providence. Now for example, I have a 100 kg object which weighs for 100 kg, and let's say I have to lift it. I have to make a decision to lift that, and then the necessary strength to lift the 100 kg weight is provided onto the physicality of the action. Now let's say if I just like that cannot lift a 100 kg weight, but there are a lot of people who are trained on the Olympics to just lift that. How is it that they are able to do that? Because they are trained not only physically but also mentally. Okay. It is also a case wherein this area of the mind field is more specific or more personalized from person to person. It is very much the property of that particular person. This can be literally compared to physical and chemical properties of the elements in the elementary tables, some of which might be common, some of which might be different. So to my nature, my characteristics in my mind field can be different from that of other person. So based on that, every single experience that is generated in the mind field would produce an emotion, and this emotion can get categorized into three broad areas. I can either develop a like to the experience, I can develop a dislike to a situation, and I can be neutral to whatever I am experiencing. So when this happens, so basically now we have cognized something, we have tried to interpret something, and now we are also developing an emotion. Throughout this process, there is a perceiver, there is a person who is observing this throughout. It's so fast that you cannot differentiate one from the other. It is like so churning, dynamically churning that, and so quick that you cannot identify them separately, but this is how it happens. It is very much like how a car goes through an assembly line, wherein, like, you know, in the first stage you have certain exteriors being fitted, and in the last stage probably the exteriors. In the first stage probably you can have the engine, and then few other internal parts, and then the wheels can be fitted in the other the following assembly line, and then the steering and the seats, and then finally the external cabins and all that. So likewise, the mind, in a flash of a second, it perceives, it interprets, it compares the data with the past, throughout it generates an emotion, it happens in a jiffy. And there is an observer throughout. Okay, this observer observes something, and let's say, okay, I see this. Oh, I see this dosa in front of me. I see this cake in front of me. And then it compares it with the past data and says that I ate this cake last week in that particular bakery and it tasted better than this. So this is when it compares it with the past data. Okay, and I also liked it, so this is better than this. So the current experience is compared with the previous experience, and so there is an emotion of like. And so in this particular case, okay, the person who is observing something is actually appearing to be constant, but that is not the reality. The experiencer takes the shape of the experience every other time that the experience is happening. So now let's say something happy situation is there and I'm experiencing this, then I see myself as somebody who observes a happy situation. And now let's say something unpleasant is happening, then I see myself as an observer who is perceiving or who is seeing or who is undergoing an unpleasant happening. So this observer is becoming an victim to the happening or the experience. So the observer is very much like a shadow of a particular happening. Now let's say I have a ball and I am casting that in front of a light source, then an image is casted. So the experiencer is a function of the experience. So that said, the experiencer has no control over the object that is put forth or the source of the light that is that together, the object and the source of the light together are casting a shadow. Similarly, here the nature of the self or the nature of the mind field along with whatever is received from the external source, both put together and create an experience, and that experience or that emotion is what somebody is undergoing or experiencing. Now where is the problem? This is how the mind works. Now where is the problem? The problem is when the mind wants certain kinds of experience and it does not want certain kinds of experience. So that is when the experiencer thinks that he likes. So because this mind field is more different from person to person, for any given situation, different people can react differently. Now let's say there is an unpleasant stuff kept near me, or let's say there is an insect around me, then based on my nature or my characteristics, I can either develop a liking towards the situation or a disgusting feeling towards this particular situation. I might want to get rid of this particular insect that's around here. So because this response is varying from person to person, it becomes more like I am having this particular situation. So it is now the I gets prominence here and the I wants to change it. However hard the I wants to change a given situation, it cannot, because it is just a function of the experience. Whatever is there, it just sees as what has occurred. See, there is no permanent nature of that particular experiencer. So whenever an experience is there, it becomes a function of that, it becomes a victim of that, it becomes a perceiver of that. But on its own, it has no standard set of likes or dislikes or characteristics or whatsoever you say. To give you an example for this, okay, let us take our tongue for example. Now the tongue by itself helps you recognize whatever is placed onto it. Now let's say I keep something that is sweet, the tongue recognizes the sweetness of the stuff that is placed onto it, and let's say I eat something bitter or whatever the taste is, then the tongue helps you recognize that. But when nothing is placed onto it, you hardly recognize the taste of the tongue. So too, the nature of the I is projected only when there is an experience. When there is no object that is projected, you can hardly recognize this. For example, now let's say I have a torchlight and I cast this light onto some object. I am able to recognize that. Now let's say I cast it on the sky wherein there is hardly any object in between, not even dust particles, then I don't get to see my light source anywhere. It is just getting dissipated onto something. So the light needs an object for it to be reflected on. So all that you get to see is only a reflection wherein you cannot see the original source. Just like as to how you don't know as to what is the taste of your tongue, so too until unless an experience is happening, you don't know anything about this sense of I. This sense of I is not projected. It is very much like a screen onto which, where like now let's say in a movie theater you go and you watch something on top of, on a screen. It is actually a plain blank screen. But with the visuals and with the darkness all around it, you get to see objects projected, and once objects are projected, it seems pretty live, but what is being projected is just on top of a screen. So too, your internal self has a nothingness, and onto this nothingness is where, like, you know, every signal is getting projected and you are getting conscious of this signal. And secondly, what we get to see is just the output of the experience. Once an experience happens, then thereafter you get to see that so and so experience has happened, it is very similar to how lightning occurs and later you hear the thunder sound. By the time you hear the thunder sound, the lightning and the thunder has already happened, but you see it after it has occurred. So do you get to see or feel or cognize a particular thought after it has come and it's just leaving, and only then you get to know about it. So now let's say there is no input, you don't get to see any output as well. Very similar to how your electrical appliances work. Now let us for the time being assume that electric current is that subtle entity. It connects or operates a fridge or fan or microwave oven or a tabletop machine, whatsoever. The output is just a function of the characteristics or the design of that particular manual, okay, but using what has got projected out, okay, you cannot define the input. That is, the source electricity cannot be found just by how a mixie operates or a fridge operates or a fan operates. So you cannot traverse backward and say that, okay, this is my output, so my input should be something like that, because the input is massive and what is projected out is 1/n of the infinity. For example, in your school days or in your graduations and post graduation, if you were to remember as to what was your top percentile, okay, or what was your percentage in terms of your marks that you've scored, you would say, I was the school topper, I got 95% or 70% in so and so subjects. Okay, when you call out a particular percentile or a percentage, out of how much is something that you don't explicitly call. Like very rarely you would call the percentages as to 70 out of 100. So that out of what is taken for granted. When you talk about percentages, obviously your percentages versus 100. So too, when you perceive something, the perceiver takes the shape of what is perceived. When you interact with your parents, then you take the shape or the form of a son or a daughter or whomsoever, and you interact. So based on that experience, you take a particular form or a shape. You give yourself 5% or 10% based on that particular situation. The same self, when you are interacting with your children, you take a totally different form and you give another nth from your infinity. When you are interacting with your boss, then you give another m out of infinity, n out of infinity, likewise. Okay, so always what is casted is some n percentage out of the infinity. The infinity can never be known, or your true self can never be known. Your relative self of what you experience in your current situation is what? So what you get to know, what you get to be aware of. So that said, that is the true nature. The experiencer is what identifies or attaches with any experience. So now this is all about who am I. But how is this knowledge about who am I going to help us? Bagavath Mission, we specialize in mind science. But why is it, like, any topic which is not going to help us in day-to-day situation, why ever talk about it? Okay, just awareness should come of help in some way or the other. Okay, so this particular topic, once anybody gets to understand this, they know as to how dynamic they are, how fluid they are, just dependent upon the external situation. How is the external situation? That situation is reflected onto me and it creates an emotion, and this process is continuously changing, and continuously I get a reflection and continuously I develop an emotion. Generally, people have difficulties because we are conditioned by certain preferences, either by the preferences that we receive continuously, which we either like and want to retain it forever, and signals that we don't like and we want to just abstain from it. And we are also very much hooked on to our past data, and we believe that for true. And these two, holding on to certain emotions and wanting to go only with the past experience, what conditions us. And all the problem, call it any, is because of this conditioning, and this conditioned mindset is what is the root cause of all our problem. So by knowing the nature of yourself, you know that the experience is just 1/n of yourself, and you by yourself are infinite in nature. That known, you can just keep your attention. One need not try to change the image that is reflected. Now let's say you stand in front of the mirror and you find something odd in your face. You don't go and try to change the mirror. You try to change yourself. Likewise, whenever you see something pleasant or unpleasant that is cast onto you, you don't try to change your inner self and try to keep it in a particular state of mind. Rather, be free internally and keep your attention on the external situation and see if there is anything that you need to do to make the situation better or to whatsoever. Okay, so your attention will be very much onto the external situation. And also consider the example wherein, let's say in most cases, see, we are holding on to a huge luggage, or we are weighing something internally, which is pulling or draining away our energy and not helping us give the best to the external situation. So now let us take the example of a lucky man who always carries some weight. What is the lucky man trying to indicate? Let's say you want to travel across a distance. What is the solution wherein you hold on to your weight, that is your past memory and things that you cling on to. Okay, you can keep it down, take rest, again hold on to it, travel for another distance, rest for a while, and again hold it on. Holding on a heavy weight and traveling for a long distance is impossible, but resting as and when would help you travel from point A to point B. That's the case wherein you board a train, and until you board a train you might have to hold on to your luggage, but the minute you board the train you can just keep it aside and just take it when you enter the destination. Okay, so too you need not hold on to anything rigidly internally, but just act based on the situation of the need of the hour. Very similar to how a doctor operates on a patient. He looks at the OCT or whatsoever, and based on that he operates on the patient. He doesn't do anything with the device by itself. So very much you need to see as to what is reflected. Use that very much like a mirror or a reflection, and see what is it that the signals are telling me to act externally, and keep this fluid and dynamic in nature, so that you are always connected with whatever is happening alive, not hooking on to something that is stale and something that is preferred according to you. This said, one is fluid in their own nature, very much like a liquid which would take the shape of the container that it is put in. Not like how when a liquid freezes on to some solid object and it is refusing to take the shape of the container. So that fluid nature is what that is going to help one relieve themselves from all their personal baggage and enjoy this worldly life. Hope this short talk on who am I will come your way, and thanks for watching. Bye.